I am your host, Carrie Scollon, giving us different perspectives on where we are and where we want to go on our journey. Thanks for being here, and I look forward to spending some time with you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session of the FoundHer Series. I am your host, Carrie Scollon, and I have another beautiful guest on today who I am thrilled to share with you all her wisdom and her experiences and what she has to offer along the lines of resilience is what we're going to focus on today. So Cindy, welcome. This is Cindy Thompson. She is a registered clinical counselor, certified life coach, executive life coach, podcast host of a resilience project, which I can't wait to dive into. Beautiful wife of many years, you can tell us how many, and mom to two grown adults. So welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. And let's just dive in, see what we got to share with people today.
Thank you, Carrie. And thank you for what you're doing to lift women up. I just think this is such a beautiful mission that you're on. And I can see the connections you're making. And I think that we need to do more of that, is lift one another up. So thank you for doing that. Yeah.
You're welcome. It's my favorite thing to do.
I bet. You just light up when you talk about it.
Thank you. I love it. I love it. I feel like I'm the luckiest person that I get to make all these connections and share all of these beautiful people out to whoever needs them and watches.
Yes. Well, and I think that's the sweet part about what you're doing, is that it's identifying that we can lift one another up, that together we are stronger. I know it's a bit of a slogan, but I do think we could be doing more of that. So I'm hoping that catches on and we continue to look for opportunities. So let me see. So I'm going to answer that one question. So we are at 31 years married, my husband and I. Yes. And we spend a lot of time together these days because he is a partner with me as an executive coach in Thompson Leadership Coaching. He helps me with the podcast, a resilience project. He does the editing. He had no idea when I said I was going to start a podcast, he had no idea that he was going to be part of that. And I didn't either, because I didn't know what I was getting into. But sometimes you just say yes and you figure out how to do it later. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
So over the last 30 some years, I have been having thousands and thousands of conversations with people, amazing stories of resilience. And at this point in my career, I am moving more into the coaching because I feel like this is a time to really do things a little bit differently. Not only in my career, it breathes new life into what I do. I still get to meet those amazing people, but I get to make maybe a difference in a greater way. So I'm going to say that to suggest, for example, I love working with nonprofit organizations, because if I help leaders in nonprofit organizations, they help communities.
Yeah.
So I feel like the ripples are so much more positive than, not more positive than just say that hour for hour individual work that I might do over the next several years. We'll see how many years I got left, but I'm going to meeting with people as long as I feel called to do so. And then I started.
You've really transitioned from your counseling into the executive life coaching more so? That's what you're.
It's something that's lighting me up right now. You know, when you do anything for 30 years, sometimes you just need to try making a little shift. Sometimes we realize we're ready for a slight change. And even though I love people and I love working with people, that's not going to change, but it's just a new skill set that I've added to my toolbox, if you will. And so even when I'm meeting with people in my counseling practice still, that's still going, but I am slowly building up the coaching even more so. I'm not going to say I'm closing it down because I've grown that baby over several years.
Yeah.
I'm not ready. I'm not ready to shut it down completely. So the bottom line is everybody gets the best of each of those skill sets whenever I meet with them.
Yeah. I love that. I love that you're doing what lights you up too, because I think anytime we can do something that lights us up and it's our passion, that ripple effect, like you said, is just so much wider because of the energy that we're bringing. So to be aware of that I'm doing this right now because it's what lights me up. And if that changes, then we'll.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go somewhere else.
Just
Love
trust
that.
it.
So you're a big piece of what you're doing, or maybe I should say it's turned into a bigger piece because of how much is involved, is your A Resilience Project podcast. The amount of incredible speakers that you've had on there is mind-blowing. And the job that you do in bringing their stories to life is incredible. I just think it's amazing. So resilience is a big part of what you coach on in all aspects of your life, it seems like. And I know that one of the sentences that I love on your website about the podcast is that you're building resilience among humans, one conversation at a time. And that hit me as what a beautiful foundation, because that's really what this boils down to, is one conversation at a time. 100%. So resilience, can you give me an idea, like, how do you define what resilience is? Do you have a definition of that?
Well, and the essence is that your ability to bounce back after difficulties, the ability to, kind of like a marshmallow, right? You take back that shape again, and to be able to, weather it, to know that you can trust that things will get better. This isn't forever. And so there's several kind of skill sets within resilience, but that's the essence of it, is that we know we can go through tough times. We already have. We're all resilient. Yeah. And we just may not know it as that. We may not identify that we actually are more resilient than we give ourselves credit for.
Right.
And so, recognizing what you've already been through, all of us have been through a pandemic. And so when you think about how maybe nervous you were, uncomfortable you were with the change, how did we navigate that? How did you individually, as each person, work through that and find ways to weather it, right? To navigate it. And so the essence of resilience is drawing on, in the podcast, I like to draw on people's stories, because we learn from stories. Mm-hmm. When we hear what people have been through, and we hear that the strengths, the practices that they put in place, and it may not be a one and done, it might have been several different skills that they put in place to help them get through it. I want to share that. I want people to learn from each other. And we don't have to do it in isolation, because there might be a piece that you take away from each episode, or certain guests that you resonate with.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so a question: when you're talking to so many of these people, is there ever a point where there's a commonality between them? Like when they have the resilience to get through what they've gone through, is it something that they were even aware of at the time? Or is it when they reflect back, they see, wow, I actually had a lot more in me than I realized, or I was a lot stronger than I thought I was? Or like, is there anything like that you see a thread that you could probably connect each story back with something? Like, I just feel like we've got so much more in us than, like you said, that we give ourselves credit for. And until we're faced with some sort of adversity, we don't realize that it's in there.
I agree. Well, and to that point, Carrie, I really do believe that it's often in hindsight that we recognize those strengths, because while we're going through it, often we're white knuckling it the whole way, or we're just heads down, just doing what we have to do to get through it. It could be cancer. It could be a major tragedy. It could be a natural disaster. So what are the things that people might be recognizing after the fact? Those are the strengths that they discover in themselves. Right. Some people already had some really good practices in place before they went through that event or that circumstance, and they realized that actually prepared them to get through it a little bit easier, if you will. Yeah. But they had some really core practices that they already were incorporating in their lives, like maybe a gratitude journal or mindfulness meditation. Yes. Those are some things that some people were already practicing, and that they just expanded on and continued to rely on those and other practices that they may be built in.
Oh, that's huge. That just made me think of I think it's a quote it may have been Steve Jobs that said that you can't connect the dots going forward. You can only connect them looking back.
Yeah.
To see where each one of those experiences have led you. And I love that you bring that up because, sometimes an experience from years back actually helped you through the one that you're dealing with right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I know even in my own personal life that has been the case, even though I don't dwell there, I don't always look back. But in fact, some of the adversities that I experienced growing up, my mom had a brain tumor. So I was 9 when she first developed her tumor. And at 13, she ended up having her second tumor operation and going into a care home and being disabled mentally and physically. So in essence, I lost my mom at 13, even though she lived for another 27 years, right? So when I think about some of the challenges that we went through as a family very young, I can draw on that experience and know that I can get through hard things.
Right. So
just a quick example. Yeah.
Well, no, it's a great example because like you said, we don't want to dwell in the past, but if we can take something from a situation that, that would have been devastating as a 13-year-old to lose your mom, but still have her. Like, I can't even imagine what that process was. But like you said, being able to look back to see that you did make it through that and what were the strengths that were basically given to you.
Right.
You had to accept them. But I think a lot of people stay in the past because they feel it's a safer place to stay. But once they start to get a little taste of what the future could be, I think that's what I kind of hope to bring forward is there's some places that we really want to get through.
Right.
And it's going to be uncomfortable.
Well, and that's essentially, we are helping people get comfortable with being uncomfortable because that is life. And one of my slogans with coaching and on the podcast is adversity is inevitable while resilience is a practice. And so we can't expect life to be perfect. That isn't life. Right. But if we go into it, and I often use the sailboat metaphor, is that we have what we need already inside of us. So the sailboat is not meant to be tied up at the dock. We're meant to go out and try new things, fail forward, have new experiences, and grow. We don't grow sitting on the couch. Right? Or at the dock. So, as we go out, it's trusting that I can cope with whatever comes my way. And so that's the mindset that comes with a resilience practice. This is hard right now, but I know it's not forever. I know I can do this. And it's always moving forward. You might take a day to rest. You might have a really rough week, for example, but I don't want people unpacking there and landing there. Right.
So would you just listening to you, I could listen to you all day though. So, but what I felt when you were saying that was, does it come back to having faith in yourself that you're going to be able to come through this? Like, is there some piece that that it's like you said, everything's a practice. Resilience is a practice. And the faith that you are going to get through this, to me, would be my foundation. Trusting in myself and having the faith that it could get worse. Right. But I'm still going to get through it. I'm going to get through it. And being aware of that, those times where you feel like you can't, and drawing back on something. Yes. So that's a practice, I would say.
And that's why I say I want people to really be building that skill set along the way. It's kind of like if you are going to learn to play the piano, you don't wait till the night before the concert to practice. So as we practice our resiliency in small ways, then we are going to have that muscle memory and some experience to draw on to say, oh yeah, I already navigated that hard thing. Beautiful. Or I already went through that. And it might have been a smaller, challenge in their lives. But I want people to start gathering some data on what did I do? How did I get through that? Even though it was hard or I was nervous or scared, I did it anyway. And what did I get out of that? How did I grow? And to start gathering some of that information. And that way we do start to trust ourselves.
And that's just fantastic advice, in my opinion, because we usually just look at what we didn't do.
Mm-hmm.
So to start keeping track of, yeah, that was a win. I did that. I used this, or I thought this way, or just so that we can build our own toolbox of things that we've actually done ourselves. I just think we forget to give ourselves a pat on the back when we've actually done something. So I know that I have people do like a win journal. Write down your win of the day, right? It can be anything. It can be the simplest thing. Like today I thought I was going to have to cancel my lunch plans because it is a whiteout in Calgary today. And we don't have winter tires on the car yet. And I'm like, okay, I could cancel, or I can get my winter boots out. I can get my winter jacket out and go anyways. And it was a choice. Yes. I'm going to be uncomfortable out there. I know I am, but I'm going to do it anyways because what's on the other side is going to be nice. Mm-hmm. So it's just being aware of those choices, right? Being uncomfortable.
And that's part of it, is choosing to say, I can lean into this, and I know that I have what I need. And if I don't, I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask, or I'm going to rely on others. And, I'd like to identify that piece, Carrie, because I do think we are a society that feels like we have to be so independent in how we get through challenge. Yeah. And yet we are much stronger when we rely on other people. And when we do it as a community, when we have people rally around us, how good that feels to know that we don't have to do it alone. Yeah. And my other piece that I'm hoping to start advocating for is radical interdependence. So that we can start to see that we're not alone. We can ask for help. We can reach out and talk to somebody, talk to a friend, or surround yourself with people that are going to help you move through that, move forward. Yes. You don't have to just figure it all out.
So, yeah, so true. So if there was somebody in front of you that are going through a rough time, or I love to give people tools that they can take away. So if they watch our show, they've got something that is maybe a bit scary, but it's doable. Or they may have to stretch themselves, but it's something for them to take away. Can you give me some examples of what are small steps, little things that you can start to do, like you said, to start building that practice?
Well, and this is the cool part, we're, I think, 77 episodes into the podcast, and every guest brings often some new little piece that I hadn't considered before. So I have the privilege, I feel like I've been studying this now for 2 solid years and drawing on the wisdom of the guests who've been through some amazing tragedies, health scares. And some of the practices are, like you just said, Carrie, where what is some things that happened today that I noticed, even though I'm in the midst of a major storm in my life, what are some small things that actually felt like it was okay? What went well? And this comes from positive psychology. What went well and why? And if we not just keep a gratitude journal, but actually start to dive a little deeper, then we are actually starting to look for what's going well in our day, as opposed to the things that aren't going well. Yes. And it helps to rewire our brains and allows us to develop more of that familiarity of looking for the good in even some of the direst of situations.
Yes.
And one lady who was going through cancer, I think of her example of what is some of her favorite music that she likes. And she made a list. And that way she could relive, some of the good memories and good feelings attached to that music. So when she was, stuck at home alone and couldn't go out and do things, felt somewhat isolated, that was one thing that she did that brought her a little bit of joy, right?
Music.
Yeah. So I like to identify that sweet spot of taking time to rest and then move forward. So give yourself a half a day, but again, don't stay there, don't unpack there, but then keep moving forward, even in those next small steps. So look for just what is my next step that I could do, right? Maybe it's just getting out of bed in the morning. Maybe it's saying I'm going to get out for a walk, even though I don't feel like it. because quite often we can't wait till we feel like it. But most times we don't regret that we did get out and go, right?
And I like that you added the why as well. I think that really, I don't know, solidifies it, or it brings that emotion that you can attach to it, right? That's where we start to see more of those. I think the feeling is what makes you want more of it as well, right? So when you can connect those two, I think they call it like the heart-brain coherence, where you can think it, but when you feel it, it makes even more of an impact on your mental health, I think.
Right. Well, and I like to say that it also brings back to some ways that we've challenged ourselves, ways in which we actually pushed ourselves in that moment, and that you start to see more of what you were able to do.
Right.
Because you're right. We do focus on what we didn't do or where we still want to be. We don't always notice, those small steps that we are actually growing and moving through that event, that it's not as bad this week as it was a month ago.
Yeah.
We don't look at it like that. And yet I do feel by capturing some of those successes, capturing those ways in which we're growing through it, that it's not as bad as it was, helps you find hope. And that's the other piece, right? Is looking for that hope.
I love that word.
I know, right?
I think I should have named one of my girls Hope. I just love that word. I got Grace in there. One's the middle name is Grace. I love all my girls' names, but Hope was one that I thought of after. I was like, oh man, there's just something about when I say that word. Just what that gives out. I just love that. A little bit of hope.
Well, and since you brought up your kids, I wanted to mention, a story from one of my kids, if I may, because when I think about resilience, I think about getting out of our comfort zones. And our daughter, and I say this for all the moms out there who have maybe anxious kids, this is my daughter who was my anxious kid in grade 1, school refusal. I had to literally carry her into the car and get her into the school. It was a really rough few weeks in grade 1, right? This is my kid who was highly sensitive. And when she finished her teaching degree, she was nervous. She didn't know what was next. Like a lot of young people, they might be finishing high school and they feel pressure to know what's next. They might be finishing their degree and not know where they're going to get that job. And so I know that she was nervous about that. She'd been home for her university degree and now finished as a teacher. And she was nervous about what's next. So she wanted to kind of stay, maybe around, maybe stay at home another year, right? Yeah. And she'd be okay with my telling this now because of the way the story has developed. And I just said, this growing up is an exciting time, getting your own place, maybe getting a roommate, finding out where your next job's going to be and being able to embark on that. And it was really hard for her to hear that. It felt like I was kicking her out, but in fact, it was in service to her, right? And now she ended up, partly in spite of me or wanting to punish me, went and applied for jobs around the world and ended up moving to Nairobi, Kenya.
Wow.
Right? So we are 6 years post that scenario. She loves it. It feels like home to her. But I think about someone getting out of their comfort zone, learning a new culture, not knowing what I have to be careful of, right? Blonde hair, blue-eyed girl in Nairobi.
Yes.
But yet she grew so much from that and developed confidence in herself. And so I tell that story as a way of saying sometimes we are choosing the very adversity we might have to go through. Right. It might be a next step in our career, letting go of one job, moving into something else. It might be for some people navigating cancer, right? Some of these things happen to us, and sometimes the adversities are happening because we're making scary choices to grow. Yeah. So I like to point that out because in some of those cases, most cases, we look back and we realize how much we've grown.
Right.
And
that's important, very important to do that. And she walked through some of that fear, but she can look back now and see that because fear is what holds so many of us back. I mean, and I'm first one to admit that that's held me back from doing a lot of things is the fear. Yeah. And I'm stepping through that now and doing it anyways. So I think they say that's where courage comes from, is when you're scared, but you do it anyways.
That's correct. Yes.
Right. So,
and so, yeah, we
that.
want people to keep stepping out of their comfort zone in order to kind of keep growing. Right.
Yeah.
And so one of the pieces that I thought was also worth mentioning when you asked about themes, other than maybe a couple scenarios that were horrific, in most cases, people have commonly said they don't regret that very hard thing, even cancer, happening in their lives because of what they discovered about themselves and how they grew. And that they now look at adversities as a way of asking themselves, how is this serving me?
Wow.
Right? There's a mindset for you. That's
amazing. Absolutely. Imagine if we could all get there.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
So
but we can.
Yeah.
We can.
We can.
It's an option, but there is hope that we can all get there.
I want people to know we've all survived 100% of those hard things already.
Yeah. Yeah.
With that, what would we be willing to endure knowing we've already gotten through every single adversity?
Right. And you've already practiced and shown resilience.
Yeah.
In many areas, we all have. So it's acknowledging what some of those are too. So you said some of the tips or some of the things that we can be practicing is, it sounded like when you talked about the gratitude, but adding the why, getting that emotion in there and the feeling of it, and music, just to kind of lift you out of a state. Is that like?
Music's powerful. In fact, I've got a guest coming up that talks about specific types of music that calms our brain waves and helps us just be in that moment. There's also, we talked a little bit today about mindset and having a mindset that you can get through it and a belief that you already have what you need to get through it. Yes. Taking time to rest, but also keep moving forward. I also want to mention self-care as self-compassion. So that self-talk is part of that mindset, to not be so hard on yourself that you're creating your own adversity and storm.
Yes.
Right? As
Give
women,
ourselves grace, right? It's a grace.
Yeah.
I believe that's one of the most important things to start practicing.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to name one, it's the self-compassion, because we are so hard on ourselves.
I agree. Yeah. And we don't need to be, right? So being able to remember that we are capable, we are learners, that we may not know how to do it yet, but that's okay. We don't know how we're going to get through it yet, but we will figure it out. And not be beating ourselves up or comparing to one another.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Comparison is the thief of joy. I don't know how many times I've said that, and somebody told me who said it, and I can't remember. Definitely not my quote, but it is something that comparison. Yeah, where other people are, where there's no comparing you to anybody else. Absolutely.
Just I know we're almost out, but I wanted to just quickly share a quick visual that, those headlamps that we wear when we're caving.
Yes.
Or if we look at each other's headlamps directly, we get blinded.
Right.
And so if I look away from your headlamp, I find my path and where I'm going. So often we look at other people and go, what do you think of me? What do you think of me? And we get so confused and we lose track of where we're going. So if you ever have that, just look away from the other people's lights, because they're on their own path and you just focus on yours.
Oh, I love that visual. I have not heard of that one before, but that is, I'm a very visual person. So putting that into a perspective like that is that's very helpful, because we are blinded by other people's light. Mm-hmm. And then you don't see your own either.
You're right.
Looking into somebody else's.
Yeah. So
I love that. Just veering that little tiny bit shines your own light on the path that you're meant to go. You're not meant to be in the same path as somebody else. So that's beautiful. Oh, I really like that. Okay. I got to use that one.
I'm glad I could leave you with a goodie.
Yes, that was good. I'll give you credit for that one, but I'm definitely going to be using that one. I love that. So again, to wrap it up, it's really, shine your own light. Don't look at others for it. The validation, all of that comparison, validation from outside, because we all have, I really do believe, like you said, we all have what we need to be resilient on the inside already. It's just becoming aware of that.
Yeah,
That's
and just
beautiful.
keep adding to those practices, because what served you so far, you might go into another scenario and go, okay, I think I need a few more because this is new for me, to be open to adding to that toolbox, if you will. Beautiful.
All right. Well, we need to end it there. Cindy, I appreciate you so much for coming on and sharing with us. Resilience is something we all have. We can all practice, and follow or listen to Cindy's podcast at resilienceproject.com. Incredible. You will not regret 1 second that you spend listening to that. And for all of you, you all know that you are more than enough as is. And we hope to see you next week. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye.